So I've been playing guitar for nearly 20 years now, but after about 2 of those years, I had gotten pretty good, but I had also hit a wall. I couldn't make any progression in terms of knowledge and in terms of technique, and I had no idea why. I tried a bunch of things and couldn't for the life of me figure out how to get past that wall. I looked at what I already knew, the notes on the neck. Most of the bar chords and open chords. Even some fancier chords like sevenths and ninths. I knew most of the common chord progressions, and I could improvise solos in most songs in major and minor keys using the major scale and the minor pentatonic. That was pretty much the extent of what I learned within those first 2 years of playing guitar. And if this sounds anything like you, bear with me through a little bit of exposition here because I want to prepare you kind of for what the big reveal is going to be at the end. Trust me, I think if you stick with me, what you learn today will hopefully change your life like it did mine. Now there's 2 pieces of information I want to get across in this video. The first is related to music theory knowledge and the unique way in which it applies to the guitar. And the second is how a really simple and subtle change in perspective can completely change how you hear and play music, unlocking a whole new world of experimentation and freedom that you never knew existed. Now, because I plateaued in my knowledge and understanding of music overall, what I played was limited to that. All I ever did was play the same things over and over again without actually making any technical progress because I was never playing anything new. I wasn't inspired enough to practice the same thing over and over and over again to make any progress unless I found myself, interested in maybe learning a new song that happened to incorporate something new, either technically or knowledge-wise that I didn't know before. It seems like the natural evolution of my theory knowledge at the time, which I think is quite common amongst most average guitar players, was to learn more scales and about the different modes. But I'd inevitably end up looking at something like this and instantly knew that I did not have any interest, let alone the time, in studying all this stuff. What was the circle of fifths and how would I use it? How many sharps are in F sharp Dorian? How many flats are there in B flat Lydian? What's the 6th note in E locrian? If I have the ionian mode, what notes would I change if I wanted to make it phrygian? Even if I took the time to really drill through this stuff and memorize it to the point where I would be able to retain it in the long term, how would I actually apply it? What utility would it have to me as a guitarist? If I could solo in G mixolydian, that would be cool, but what about if I wanted to write a song in G mixolydian? I'd still have no idea what chords I could use. Even if I spent the time to go over and learn a bunch of this stuff, it always seemed like it was only a tiny fraction of what I needed to learn for any of this stuff to be of any use to me. It was like I had to go through a billion flashcards over and over and over again, and all that time I would be doing not what I'd want to be doing, which was playing the guitar. At no point was I actually playing the guitar in a way that was fun or interesting or entertaining or anything for me, so it took the fun out of playing the guitar. So honestly, I never learned any of that stuff. Now then, after about a decade in that rut, I had a Eureka moment that forever changed how I understand music. It changed how I saw the guitar and even changed how I saw other instruments like the piano. I realized that all of this information that I thought I needed to memorize, every single bit, was actually something that I actually had enough information to use already. I literally had known it all along. Now, as a mostly self-taught guitarist, I always felt like that I was at a huge disadvantage when it came to learning music theory, and the greater musical community around me reinforced that idea constantly. All of the classically trained musicians, the jazz pianists, the folks that knew all of the advanced theory and could sight read, They were the lucky ones who actually knew music on a different level than I, someone who could only read tabs and play the same old Guitar Center licks over and over again. At this point, I imagined music theory was kind of an ocean that I wanted to explore, but I unfortunately didn't know how to swim. Now, if you're watching this video now, you're likely in the same spot I was. You might have waded out a few feet, but you see the ocean floor very quickly drop off and become too deep for you. You see folks off in the distance exploring this seemingly infinite world, effortlessly floating around, and you wish you could join them. But not only do you not have gills and don't know how to swim, you just don't have the time or desire to try to teach yourself how, sitting here in the shallows all by yourself. Doing doggy paddle exercises all day for weeks in a foot of water doesn't sound like your idea of fun, so you don't bother. Now, what I'm going to teach you today is not like some magic pill that will instantly grant you the knowledge and experience to be able to jump in and swim all by yourself. That's not really where this metaphor is going. Now, what I hope you'll learn in this video will effectively provide you with some scuba gear, an infinite capacity oxygen tank, and a life vest. It'll let you jump into the deep end right now, day one, with no experience, skill, or knowledge whatsoever, and let you flop around in the same depths as all those other folks that you've envied for so long without any risk. No need for you to flop around on the beach in the sun with sand in your shorts while you try and learn and memorize all of the scales and patterns. You can skip all that BS and begin to experience it now. Now, at first, it's going to be awkward, and obviously you're not going to be able to swim right away, but I promise you're going to be having more fun than if you were stuck standing in the beach ankle deep on the shore for the rest of your life. Over time, the more you doggy paddle around, dip down a few feet, and explore this new world you've never seen before, you won't be able to not naturally develop the ability to swim. If you're immersed in the water without fear of drowning, you're having a much better time, and I promise you, you will not be able to not learn even by accident. You're going to start to develop little tricks that work for you, and maybe even catch yourself using some of the techniques that you've seen others do but never understood why until now. One day as you're floating around in the water, you'll come to realize, wait, I think I know how to swim. During that whole period, at no point did you feel like you were studying or doing drills or practicing. You were just experiencing and enjoying as much new stuff as you could, even if you didn't understand it all. Suddenly, it's going to dawn on you that you've been swimming around here without realizing it. It all feels natural and intuitive, and you'll be able to take off that life vest and experience the rest of the world without that fear of drowning. Alright, now with that introductory metaphor out of the way, allow me to share with you my musical life vest. When I was a teenager, I had a poster very much like this hanging on my wall. I was lying in my bed with my guitar in my hands, looking up at this poster like I had done a million times before, and for some reason when I looked at it this time, something significant stood out to me. What I came to discover was that all of these different keys, modes, chords, patterns, scales, key signatures, progressions, they weren't actually different. They weren't actually unique at all. They weren't arbitrary. They weren't as random as they seemed. What I thought was 1,000 unique pieces of musical trivia that I had to study and memorize in order to use was actually one single piece of information with 1,000 different names. can't describe how I felt at this point. It was almost like I had been lied to. How come no one had said before that if you knew one scale, you pretty much knew them all? I'm going to say that again because I think it's significant enough that it bears repeating. If you know one scale, whether that's the major scale or the minor pentatonic, then you know every single scale. You know all of the modes, and you can use them today. Don't believe me? Let me give you an example that I think will prove it. Let me show you a simple pattern that you might recognize. Some of you might be familiar with this pattern, a simple one-octave major scale on a single string on the guitar, like this. Now that right there is the shallow water right on the edge of the beach. What I want you to do is experience how it feels to paddle around with this pattern a bit. Sticking to the first string, the high E, this pattern is pretty easy after a while and it sounds totally familiar. Something you're very likely used to hearing and playing. So what's novel or useful about this? Well, I'm going to toss you a pair of metaphorical floaties and ask you to trust me and wade out a little bit deeper into the waters here. Now, as you get a little further into unfamiliar territory, it may feel or sound a bit strange to you. Maybe like you're not quite sure how to swim out here. All you need to do is just trust me and keep paddling exactly like you did before. Huh, weird. You're in a completely new place, somewhere you've never been before, and you only know this one little piece of information, how to doggy paddle around, but it seems to be working for you out here exactly the same way. But also, simultaneously, seems to feel a little bit different. How about you paddle out a little deeper and try out there? You might not know exactly what you're doing or why you're doing it, but it seems to be working. It's the same little beginner doggy paddle that you were doing before, but out here it feels and sounds so different. Maybe you'll get a bit more confident and decide to wade out a bit deeper and try out here. Now, I have links in the description for the backing tracks I made for you to download for free and to try out for yourself. Feel free to pause the video here and give it a try for a while and see for yourself how it feels to wade around in these unfamiliar waters now that I've given you some floaties to play with. So what was the point of that demonstration? Well, potentially without knowing it, what you did was actually improvise a solo in E major, F sharp Dorian, G sharp Phrygian, and A Lydian. You were just playing in 4 different modes, even if you had never heard of those modes before, even if you don't know what those modes are or what notes are in them or how to use them. Now, that wasn't a fluke, and it's not a coincidence that music works this way. It's how pretty much all of Western music theory has operated for hundreds of years. But in my experience, in all of that time, it's been taught in a way that I would contend is simply way too inaccessible for the average guitarist. I want this video to serve as the introduction to the idea that most average guitarists already know how to doggy paddle, but they don't think that they are even remotely close to being able to swim out in the deeper parts of the ocean that is music theory. But I'm telling you that you can and you should dive into the deep end, and the more that you paddle around, the more that you do it, and the more you struggle and whatever, you'll be having fun and you'll be getting more comfortable out there, and it's going to become less alien and more familiar over time. If you already know how to doggy paddle, I'm not going to be teaching you a million different techniques for swimming in all kinds of different ways at different depths. I want you to understand that swimming is the same no matter where you go. The only thing you need to learn is where to start paddling, and the rest is automatic. This little tool here is just the thing you need to, in a way, know exactly that, where to start paddling. If you want to explore improvising or composing a song in any key in any mode, and you know how to play a few chords in either the major scale or the minor pentatonic, this utility will tell you exactly what notes to play and what chords you can use. Let me demonstrate by sliding to a random spot and picking a random note. Alright, let's look at G-flat Lydian. Let's start with the root note of the key we want to play in, which is pretty common in most popular music. Let's make a chord progression with a few options from what we see here. Maybe we'll play G-flat major, A-flat major, and F minor. Alright, cool, that sounds good. Now let's say all I know is how to play the major scale. Let's look at which note corresponds with the ionian mode, which is the mode of the normal major scale we're all familiar with. Ionian is just the fancy name for major scale. And we can see that it's D-flat. Let me play along with this chord progression using the notes from D-flat major and see how it sounds. Alright, let's take a look at one more example. Let's slide it on over here and let's just choose randomly B Dorian. Let's make a simple 2-chord vamp with the B minor and E major, because I know how to play those 2 chords. Now if I want to improvise a little bit along with this in B Dorian, I can mess around by using the A major scale for a bit, like this. Or I can even play around with the F sharp minor pentatonic as well. And no matter what I do, it all just works. I've been working on this project for over a year now, and I was never sure how to introduce it. Today I finally just decided to throw my initial thoughts and metaphors out there, even if they're not perfect, to see if it resonates with other people out there. Now, if you want to see me go ahead and create the kind of structured video series that I've been designing for over a year now, want me to release this little utility that I created for anyone to use, if what I briefly touched on so far in this video resonates with you in any way, please let me know by liking this video, subscribing to my music channel, leaving a comment about if maybe I've piqued your interest or changed the way that you've seen things already. And if you want me to feel more confident about being able to dedicate time to this kind of content, consider supporting me on Patreon. I hope you found this interesting. I appreciate you for hanging out and listening, and hope to see you soon. Peace.